It begins, as these stories often do, not with the bright glare of neon lights or the metallic chime of slot machines, but with a hush, a kind of breathless stillness that lives just before temptation takes shape. In the distance, a single building glows against the night, a palace of shifting color and artificial stars. And as we drift closer, you can feel the hum beneath the pavement, the low timbre of electricity and anticipation feeding into one another. Somewhere inside that gilded maze, fortunes are being created and undone with equal, indifferent ease. And in this quiet approach, welcome back to the story of money. There's something almost mythic about the first moment a person steps toward a casino. The air thickens. Time seems to loosen from its hinges. Rationality softens. You don't enter a casino so much as surrender to it, as though its doors are less portals than thresholds into a reality carefully engineered to feel inevitable. And if you find yourself drawn into this journey, consider liking and subscribing. It helps keep stories like this alive, drifting out into the world like lanterns in a night without maps. The casino facade is only the surface of a story that began long before the first slot machine flickered to life. Its roots stretch across centuries, touching ancient dice carved from bone and polished stones used to divine fate. Gambling persisted even when forbidden, perhaps because it echoed something deep within human nature, the yearning for possibility, the seductive belief that luck could rewrite the rules that govern ordinary lives. Over generations, small games became institutions, and institutions metamorphosed into empires, until eventually entire cities rose, not around rivers or ports or fertile valleys, but around the promise of chance itself. But the modern casino, this is not chance, not really. This is architecture masquerading as fate. This is mathematics wearing the mask of mystery. Step inside and the light shifts immediately. It's never harsh, never too bright, but warm and cloudless like a sunset that refuses to die. There are no windows, no clocks, nothing to remind you that the world outside is spinning at its usual pace. The air is filtered, scented faintly with vanilla or citrus, depending on which behavioral study the casino architects followed. The carpet beneath your feet, swirling in hypnotic patterns, guides you forward almost unconsciously. Every inch here is designed, calibrated, perfected to keep you suspended in a state where decisions aren't really decisions anymore. They're instincts that have been gently shaped by forces you cannot see. This is the first truth of the dark economics of casinos. The house wins before the game even begins. Not because the games are rigged in the crude, old-fashioned sense, but because the environment itself is an unspoken participant in every wager, nudging your mind toward risk, toward hope, toward chasing losses that were never meant to be reclaimed. Walk deeper and you hear it. That cascading chorus of digital bells, the faraway cheers, the muttering of dealers, the rhythmic clatter of chips sliding together like tiny ceramic heartbeats. It all blends into a soundscape that feels alive, a living organism feeding on the collective pulse of human desire. Neuroscientists have spent years studying how these sounds affect the brain, how they stimulate the same pathways associated with anticipation and reward. But to the player lost in the moment, the science is irrelevant. What matters is the feeling, uplift, tension, possibility, like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the wind to choose a direction. At the roulette table, a small crowd gathers. Faces lean forward, drawn to the spinning wheel, as if it were a miniature planet orbiting a sun of polished brass. The ball dances along the rim, white and weightless, before gravity captures it. For a second, you can feel every heartbeat in the room synchronize, suspended between hope and resignation. When the ball lands, sighs ripple outward, some bright, some sharp, some quietly devastated. But the wheel keeps turning. It always keeps turning. Yet beneath this drama of chance lies a calculation so precise it borders on artistry. Casinos aren't powered by luck, they're powered by margins, by tiny edges embedded invisibly into every game. Edges so small that a single spin might look like a miracle, but thousands of spins paint a different picture entirely. Over time, the house edge is not a theory, it's a guarantee. The outcome isn't determined by the player's decisions or the dealer's hand, but by the laws of large numbers, by statistics written in stone. The casino knows exactly how much it will earn each year, each season, each night, even though no one can predict the outcome of a single game. The grandeur of the uncertainty is only a veil. Behind it sits cold, unwavering certainty. This economic engine is so efficient that entire cities depend on its heartbeat. Las Vegas, Macau, Monte Carlo, places that glimmer not because of the wealth they generate, but because of the wealth they absorb. These cities learned long ago that the casino is more than a building. It is a gravitational force. Around it orbit hotels, restaurants, theaters, nightclubs, shopping districts, all feeding from the same stream of desire. You don't simply gamble in a city like this. You participate in a ritual of consumption so total that even your moments of rest are part of the profit model. Casinos discovered a truth long before digital algorithms and behavioral analytics took over the world. Humans are not rational creatures. They are emotional ones. They seek patterns where none exist. They cling to streaks, to signs, to the belief that their luck is due, that the universe owes them one moment of divine reversal. Entire fortunes have been built on this fragile conviction. And so the casinos cultivate it, nurture it gently, like tending a garden of illusions. There's a story often told in hushed tones of a man who walked into a Vegas casino decades ago with a small suitcase containing all his savings. He spent hours at the blackjack table, rising and falling in dizzying spirals until his savings were nothing more than memory. He left the casino exhausted, hollowed out, walking past lights that suddenly felt too bright, too loud. And yet, the next morning, he returned. Not because he believed he could win it all back, but because the casino had become, in just one night, a place where his losses felt like unfinished business. Economists call this phenomenon loss chasing. Psychologists call it cognitive distortion. But the casino calls it loyalty. Behind the scenes, hidden beyond the public floors and glittering halls, lies the true machinery of the industry. Rooms filled with monitors tracking player behavior, analytics forecasting revenue, security observing not just for cheating, but for patterns of vulnerability, because a vulnerable player is a profitable one. High rollers are courted with luxury suites, champagne, limousine rides, personal hosts. Not out of generosity, but because a single night of their play can shift the casino's profit curve for an entire week. But the darkest layer isn't found in the wealthiest players. It's found in the quiet ones, the ones who slip in alone, who sit for hours feeding bills into machines that do not speak, but somehow still answer. Slot machines are the silent predators of the gambling world. Unlike the roulette wheel or the blackjack table, they require no skill, no social interaction, no awareness of strategy. They are private rooms, carved into a public place, offering a kind of solitude wrapped in artificial celebration. With each push of a button, a fragment of hope sparks and disappears. What most players never realize is that slot machines are algorithmic illusions. They create near wins, those moments where two symbols line up perfectly and the third almost falls into place, because studies show that near wins activate the same brain regions as actual victories. Hope, it turns out, is as powerful as triumph and far more profitable. And the economics behind those machines brutal, efficient, and endlessly adaptive. These machines generate more revenue than any other form of gambling, not because they offer the highest stakes, but because they offer the perfect blend of frequency, reward, and psychological entanglement. They are engineered to create flow states, those dreamlike periods where time evaporates and a person loses track of themselves, becoming nothing more than a pair of hands and a wish. As you wander deeper into this world, you begin to understand that casinos are not places built for entertainment. They are ecosystems, architected ecosystems, where human behavior is not just observed but shaped, molded, and converted into profit. And somewhere within these walls, between the lights and the shadows, between the quiet victories and louder defeats, lies the deeper story waiting to be told. The story of power, the story of control, the story of how an entire industry learned to monetize not just chance, but hope itself. And that story, darker and more intricate than the shimmering facade suggests, continues to unfold as the night deepens. The deeper you walk into the casino's endless corridors, the more its design reveals itself, not openly, not in any way that invites suspicion, but the way a dream slowly discloses its architecture once you allow yourself to drift further in. Paths curve instead of running straight. Entrances feel narrower than exits. Lounges open suddenly into gaming floors without warning. It is a geography without logic, a landscape sculpted to keep you wandering, to ensure that every detour leads not toward the door, but toward another opportunity to risk, to hope, to lose. Somewhere behind you, the memory of where you started dissolves, replaced by the rhythmic pulse of machines and murmurs that form the casino's true compass. There's a kind of choreography in the way the crowd moves, slow, uncertain steps punctuated by sudden bursts of excitement. You see people leaning over tables, not just to get closer to the cards or dice, but as if some invisible force is drawing them nearer, pulling them into the orbit of something larger than themselves. And watching them, you begin to notice the tension in their shoulders, the flickering hope in their expressions, the weariness hiding behind the smiles. This, too, is part of the casino's calculus. The emotional flux that can be gently steered by lights, sounds, and probability, disguised as play. To understand why this world thrives, you have to understand what it feeds on, not recklessness as some assume, not greed, but the human longing for transformation, the belief that a single moment, a flip of a card, a spin of a wheel, a flash of symbols aligning can alter the course of a life. Economically, this is the most potent fuel imaginable. A marketplace built on the promise of instant metamorphosis yields profits no traditional industry could ever match. And yet the casino never promises anything directly. It whispers, it suggests, it implies. It crafts an atmosphere where possibility feels tangible, where loss feels temporary, where the next attempt always holds the potential to set everything right. The house doesn't need to convince you to bet. It only needs to create a world where not betting feels like walking away from destiny. But beneath these glowing illusions lies a far quieter truth. Economic transformation doesn't happen inside casinos, not for the players. It happens for the proprietors, the corporations, the financial empires, built on the backs of small wagers, repeated endlessly across millions of hands. Consider the journey of a single chip. It begins its life as a symbol, a representation of value abstracted from its original form. Money becomes clay, reshaped into colors and weights, detached from the mental anchors that normally restrain spending. A stack of chips feels less serious than a stack of bills. A wager placed with tokens feels less consequential than one placed with cash. Decades ago, researchers discovered that this psychological distance correlates directly to higher gambling activity. And so the modern casino chip was born, not just as a tool for convenience, but as an instrument of behavioral economics. Watch a seasoned dealer handle chips. Their hands glide through them effortlessly, turning them, stacking them, spreading them out in smooth motions. These gestures are graceful, almost hypnotic. They make money feel fluid, malleable, something that can be risked without hesitation and replaced just as easily. In that sleight of hand lies the first layer of transformation. Currency becomes game piece, and once that shift occurs, choices begin to feel less anchored to consequence. And then the second transformation. The moment a player sits at a table or stands before a machine, those chips accumulate gravity. They become the embodiment of a story waiting to unfold. Perhaps the player imagines redemption after a hard month, or escape from financial strain, or simply a moment of glory that has eluded them. The casino doesn't need to know the details, it only needs to know that every chip placed on felt carries an emotional weight far greater than its monetary value. In economic terms, casinos profit from volatility, small, constant movements of money flowing across their ecosystem in predictable patterns. But in human terms, they profit from vulnerability. Not always financial vulnerability. Sometimes it is emotional, psychological, existential. A person seeking control in a life that feels chaotic is far more likely to gamble beyond their limits. A person seeking relief from monotony or longing for recognition may cling to the thrill of risk as though it were oxygen. This is why the casino never truly sleeps. Its design ensures that at any hour, someone somewhere within its walls is experiencing that spark of hope, that burst of adrenaline, that momentary belief that the universe has shifted its gaze upon them. And for every moment like this, every cheer, every flashing win, every celebratory display projected on giant screens, there are hundreds of quiet losses unfolding in shadows. Losses that the casino does not advertise. Losses that dissolve into the carpet's intricate patterns and the low buzz of conversation. Losses that scarcely register as anomalies because they are the foundation on which the industry stands. Consider the economics behind this. Casinos function on what might be described as a paradox of visibility. They must make winners visible, loud, bright, celebrated, to reinforce the belief that fortune is not only possible, but imminent. At the same time, they must make losers invisible, quiet, anonymous, absorbed into the flow of the crowd, so that the emotional cost of gambling never fully enters the player's consciousness. This duality is carefully engineered. When someone wins, lights flash, sounds chime, staff congratulate them. When someone loses, the machine simply resets, waiting for the next attempt. Losses disappear into silence, wins explode into spectacle. Over time, the human mind begins to overestimate the frequency of victory and underestimate the frequency of defeat. Economists call this availability bias. The casino calls it design. High-limit rooms take this a step further. Hidden behind velvet curtains or glass doors etched in gold, these secluded areas are paradoxical sanctuaries. They offer privacy, luxury, personalized service, all while amplifying the intensity of risk. For some, the thrill is not in the win, but in the wager itself. The bigger the risk, the deeper the sense of significance. In these rooms, fortunes shift not in increments, but in avalanches. But the casino has already calculated every possibility. The odds, the flow, the expected loss per hour. Even the behavior patterns of high-stakes players are tracked, analyzed, and categorized. Hosts monitor them like guardians of an ecosystem, rewarding them, soothing them, nudging them back when they drift too far. To the high roller, this attention feels like respect. To the casino, it is an investment. And yet, there is an irony in this dynamic. Many high rollers are not the casino's most profitable guests. The predictable, steady losses of ordinary players generate far more revenue in the long run. The person who quietly spends their entire weekend at a mid-range slot machine, entranced by its rhythms, is statistically more valuable than the high roller who comes twice a year. The economics of scale, millions of small wagers repeated endlessly, are what make casinos financial powerhouses. They rely not on rare whales but on schools of fish. Still, within this vast ocean of behavior, one pattern stands out: the pursuit of equilibrium, the desire to return to even, to recover one's losses. This psychological thread binds the casual gambler and the compulsive gambler alike, creating a loop that is difficult to break. Casinos understand this. They anticipate it. Their business model thrives on it. Every so often, a player breaks the pattern. They win, a life-changing win, a jackpot so large it becomes a legend whispered among newcomers and celebrated on glossy billboards. But these moments do not threaten the casino's stability. They reinforce it. A big winner is the ultimate advertisement, a reminder that the impossible is not just possible, but potentially waiting for you on the next spin, the next roll, the next hand. It is the dream that keeps the machine running. Yet every dream carries a cost. Every gleaming tower, every lavish buffet, every fountain that erupts in choreographed splendor. They are monuments built not from revenue alone, but from the cumulative weight of countless small losses, each one quietly absorbed by the casino's vast financial machinery. And as we continue wandering through this shimmering labyrinth of hope and despair, the illusion deepens. Because the true power of the casino isn't that it takes your money, it's that it convinces you that the next moment, the very next moment, could give it all back. Even when the odds say otherwise, especially when the odds say otherwise, the night in the casino stretches endlessly, unbroken by clocks or fatigue. And in this timeless space, the story of its darkest economics begins to sharpen, not around winning or losing, but around something far more human, around why we continue to play. In the deepest hours of the night, when the outside world slips into sleep and the casino grows into its truest form, something subtle begins to happen. The facade of entertainment, of glamour and spectacle, peels back just slightly, enough for the trained eye to see the intricate engine humming beneath the surface. This is the hour when wandering through the casino feels like entering the bloodstream of an organism designed for one purpose: extraction. Not violently, not crudely, but with a grace so calculated it borders on the poetic. Here, money does not simply change hands. It flows through capillaries shaped by architecture, psychology, and probability, converging into the heart of the house. If you pause in a quiet corner, behind a row of machines, or beside an empty bar with bottles gleaming like jewels behind glass, you can sense the unspoken truth. Casinos survive by bending the world around the player. They don't force choices, they sculpt them. They don't deceive, they influence. Their power is not coercion, but persuasion, a soft gravity that pulls the human mind toward risk and keeps it orbiting there, suspended in a state of perpetual maybe. And the economics that arise from this kind of gravity are unlike anything in traditional business. Normal industries rely on supply and demand, on production costs, on consumer behavior that fluctuates with market forces. Casinos rely on something more primal, something older than markets and older than money itself, the human appetite for uncertainty. Uncertainty, when packaged carefully, becomes one of the most profitable commodities on earth. Casinos have mastered the art of selling moments that feel unbound from reality. A person sits at a table, stacks their chips, watches the dealer turn a card. In that instant, the ordinary constraints of life, debts, schedules, limitations, fade into a single point of focus. It is a moment where everything hangs in the balance. Economically, this moment costs the casino nothing to create. And yet players will pay for it again and again, sometimes with everything they have. This is the heart of casino economics, monetizing emotion without ever having to manufacture a physical product. A casino's inventory is hope, its currency is tension, its supply chain is human desire. And demand in this marketplace is inexhaustible. But there is something darker beneath this elegant economic model, something that becomes visible only when the casino's lights reflect against the pain hidden in people's eyes. Some players come seeking escape, some come seeking thrill, some come seeking connection in a world that feels increasingly distant, and some come because they have nowhere else to go. For these individuals, the casino is not entertainment. It is a gravitational force that captures them and refuses to let go. They sit at machines long after their posture buckles, their eyes red from fatigue, their drinks abandoned beside them. Here, the economics are not merely predatory, they are parasitic. Casinos measure not just how much money a player has lost, but how much more they can afford to lose before they break. Loyalty programs track every wager, every preference, every hour spent inside. Digital profiles map each player's habits, vulnerabilities, and thresholds, not out of malice, but out of optimization. Where most industries talk about customer lifetime value in terms of purchases, casinos define it through expected loss. The longer a player stays, the more they are worth, and so the casino invests in keeping them comfortable. Free drinks, small comps, a friendly host who remembers their name, even a well-timed conversation from a dealer designed to ease frustration and reignite hope. It's hospitality woven with psychology, luxury crafted from strategic generosity. The economics of casinos are built on a paradox. Players believe they are chasing luck, but it is the casino that is chasing them. This becomes clearest when you reach the VIP suites perched high above the casino floor, where entire worlds are built for the wealthy who believe they can bend chance to their will. These rooms are quiet, insulated from the chaos below, adorned with marble floors and soft leather chairs. The illusion here is not of luck, but of control. High rollers are given choices, room upgrades, private tables, personalized incentives, not because the casino is grateful for their presence, but because choice increases engagement. When people feel powerful, they gamble more. When they gamble more, the house edge, small as it is, scales into extraordinary revenue. And yet the irony remains. The wealthiest players lose for the same psychological reasons everyone else does. One of the most well-documented phenomena in gambling history involves a billionaire who famously lost hundreds of millions over a series of visits to different casinos. He was sophisticated, intelligent, successful, a man who built empires. But when faced with the seductive simplicity of blackjack, he reverted to the same impulses that trap ordinary players. The belief that the next hand could restore balance, the idea that streaks are meaningful, the instinct that quitting is an admission of defeat. In the end, the casino didn't take advantage of him. It merely allowed him to believe in something that wasn't true. This is the secret of the industry. Casinos don't prey on ignorance, they prey on belief. Belief that luck is streaky, belief that systems exist, belief that discipline can overcome mathematics, belief that fate can be reasoned with. But mathematics cannot be reasoned with, and fate does not negotiate. Still, there is something mesmerizing in the idea that humans continue to try. A roulette wheel spins and someone whispers a small prayer. A slot machine flashes and someone holds their breath. A dealer reveals a card and someone grips the edge of the table as though bracing for a wave. These actions are ancient rituals, remnants of our species' fascination with the unknown. Casinos simply provide the stage, yet behind the stage lies a cold economic truth. Casinos operate with an efficiency that rivals major banking institutions. Their revenue streams are diversified. They track every metric: time on device, wages per minute, player churn rate. Even the chairs are designed to maximize comfort without encouraging deep relaxation, padded enough to prevent fatigue, but firm enough to avoid lingering too long without playing. Time here is not measured by hours, but by decisions. The more decisions a player makes, the more profitable they become. Every spin, every hand, every roll contributes to the long-term advantage of the house. This is why casinos prefer fast games. Why digital interfaces have replaced old mechanical machines, why automatic shufflers were invented, why rapid roulette exists. It is not for convenience, it is for velocity. Velocity of wagering, velocity of loss. Because in the end, casinos don't rely on miracles or extraordinary luck. They rely on volume, on consistency, on the steady, quiet accrual of small amounts from vast numbers of players, an economic river so reliable that financial analysts can predict casino revenues with uncanny precision months or even years in advance. But where money flows steadily, consequences flow silently. Communities around casinos often experience increased debt loads, crime rates, and domestic strain. Families fracture under the weight of addiction, savings evaporate, dreams collapse, and yet the casinos stand untouched, gleaming temples to the idea that chance is a gift rather than a calculation. Governments, too, enter the equation. They justify casinos through taxes, tourism, jobs. They build roads and infrastructure around them. They rely on the revenue even as the social cost mounts. It is a strange contradiction, cities prospering from institutions that quietly dismantle the financial stability of their own citizens. But such contradictions are not new. They have existed for centuries, from opium dens to lotteries to state-sanctioned gambling halls. Societies have long tolerated systems that extract value from their most vulnerable populations in exchange for economic growth. And as you walk back through the casino floor, watching the players lost in their private battles with fate, you begin to understand the deeper story here. The economics of casinos are not dark because they are hidden. They are dark because they are visible, yet unquestioned. They operate in plain sight, illuminated by neon lights and wrapped in celebrations, while the true cost disappears into quiet corners and untold stories. Somewhere in the crowd, a machine erupts in sound. Someone has won, a small win most likely, but enough to draw applause, enough to prove once again that the dream is alive. And in that moment you understand why the casino never fears scrutiny. It doesn't need to hide the truth. It only needs to distract from it. And the distractions are endless. There is a moment, often unspoken, often unnoticed, when the casino's atmosphere shifts from something dazzling to something quietly oppressive. Not because the lights dim or the sounds fade, but because the mind begins to sense a weight behind the spectacle, a subtle pressure that feels less like entertainment and more like entrapment. If you remain long enough, you start to recognize that time isn't simply passing here. It is being consumed, devoured by the slow machinery of a place that profits from the erosion of hours, the fraying of discipline, the surrender of intention. Walk past the rows of machines again, but this time look not at the screens but at the faces illuminated by their glow. There is a stillness in them, a trance-like stillness, broken only by flickers of reaction. A win sparks a small smile, a brief tightening of the eyes, a deep breath taken as though permission to hope has been granted once more. A loss barely shifts the expression at all. Losses are expected, wins are craved, and in that imbalance lies the casino's quiet dominion over the human psyche. Behavioral economists have long argued that people are more motivated to avoid losses than to achieve gains. But in a casino, losses are not obstacles, they are invitations. Each one feels like a step along a path that must eventually lead to redemption. The next spin, the next hand, the next chance, this is the dark alchemy of gambling psychology, turning loss into momentum, turning disappointment into perseverance. Casinos do not invent these impulses, they reveal them, they amplify them, and in amplifying them they create an economic landscape where human nature itself becomes a commodity. Spend enough time here and you start to see the patterns that stitch the casino's world together. You notice how the most attractive machines are placed at the edges where foot traffic is highest. You notice how blackjack tables crowd the entrances to pull visitors into the flow. You notice how the bathrooms, intentionally hidden deep within the maze, force you to pass dozens of temptations before reaching them. None of this is random. Every placement, every pathway is a calculation designed to increase the probability of engagement. In other industries, this would be called optimization. In casinos, it is the architecture of influence. And if you look closely, you'll see something else too. The house doesn't merely observe behavior, it adapts to it. For decades, casinos relied on intuition and experience to shape their strategies. Veteran pit bosses could spot a struggling gambler, a card counter, or a rising star simply by reading the patterns in their movements. But today, a new layer of intelligence governs the casino floor, one driven not by instinct, but by data. Machines track the speed of play, the wagering patterns, the volatility of decisions. Loyalty cards capture demographic information, purchasing behavior, even the player's preferred drink. Algorithms analyze these data streams to predict future behavior and tailor incentives with surgical precision. You might receive a free buffet voucher at the exact moment you consider leaving. You might get a discounted room offer after a night of heavy losses. You might be approached by a host when your spending trends suggest burnout. This isn't hospitality, this is retention strategy. In many ways, the modern casino behaves more like a tech company than a gambling hall. It collects data, runs simulations, refines algorithms, it tests, measures, and adjusts. And while players believe they are navigating a world of chance, the casino is mapping their every movement, every decision, every hesitation. It learns their habits, it identifies their weaknesses, it anticipates their next steps. Economically, this creates a feedback loop where the house edge, already mathematically guaranteed, is reinforced by personalized intervention. No longer is the casino relying solely on probabilities embedded in the games. Now it uses behavior prediction to optimize the environment around the player, increasing both time spent and money wagered. And yet, despite this sophisticated machinery, the casino must maintain the illusion of fairness. If players felt manipulated, the entire system would collapse. So the illusion is safeguarded by transparency that reveals nothing. Clear rules, visible odds, published payouts. Everything looks honest, straightforward, predictable. This semblance of openness allows the deeper manipulations to remain unnoticed. For many players, the danger doesn't lie in losing money, it lies in losing themselves. Gambling addiction is often misunderstood. It is not rooted in greed, nor in a desire for wealth. More often, it stems from the brain's struggle to process intermittent rewards, those unpredictable bursts of success spaced unevenly between losses. This pattern creates a neurological loop that mirrors the effects of powerful stimulants. In this loop, the player is not chasing money. They are chasing a neurological rhythm that has hijacked their sense of control. Casinos profit quietly from this. Not aggressively, not openly, but inevitably. There is a chilling statistic whispered in regulatory circles. A small percentage of gamblers, those considered problem gamblers, contribute disproportionately to casino revenue. Some estimates suggest that less than 5% of players can generate up to 30% or even 40% of profits. Casinos never advertise this. They never acknowledge it publicly. But the financial models reveal it, tucked behind the glossy exteriors and the shimmering lights. And so the question lingers. Where does responsibility lie? Governments rely on gambling revenue. Casinos rely on consumer engagement. Consumers rely on the promise of possibility. Responsibility dissolves into a fog of conflicting interests. And in that fog, the casino thrives. Step away from the machines and move through the high-limit lounges again. You might notice individuals sitting alone with steely expressions, staring not at cards or dice, but at their own memory of losses. Sometimes they leave abruptly, without celebration or anger, just a quiet resignation, as though their departure signifies the closing of a chapter they wish they'd never written. Other times they continue, and the cycle turns again. Some of these individuals will return tomorrow. Some will return next week. Some will never return, but the casino has already accounted for that in its projections. It expects you to walk away. It also expects others to take your place. This is the dark equilibrium of casino economics. Individual losses are random, but aggregate losses are inevitable. And that inevitability creates a paradoxical sense of stability. Whereas the stock market fluctuates, commodities crash, currencies fluctuate, the casino's revenue remains astonishingly steady. It is one of the few industries where income is not merely predictable, it is algorithmic. One might say that casinos are the only businesses where customers willingly and enthusiastically pay to give away their money, believing all the while that they are one moment away from receiving far more in return. But in the shadows of these glittering halls there exists an entirely different economy, one that the public rarely sees. There are the loans extended discreetly to high rollers who exceed their bankroll. There are the partnerships with banks that manage the cash flow and liquidity of massive gambling operations. There are the marketing agencies trained to identify populations most vulnerable to the allure of risk. There are the lobbyists who shape legislation favorable to gaming expansion. There are the legal teams who ensure responsibility is diffused enough to avoid blame. And then there are the stories, private, painful, often tragic, of people who came seeking a miracle and found themselves ensnared in a cycle they could not escape. These stories rarely make headlines, they vanish quietly into the lives they unravel. Yet the casino grows, expands, flourishes. Casinos, in their polished splendor, embody a truth societies rarely confront. When money becomes entertainment, the consequences migrate from the economic to the existential. The casino isn't just a place where financial fortunes change. It's a place where identities shift, where people discover the edges of their own vulnerabilities, where hope becomes both the weapon and the wound. And as you drift once more through the labyrinth, you begin to see something else emerging beneath the glitter. A widening gap between the dream sold and the reality delivered. A dream of wealth, built on losses. A dream of control, built on manipulation. A dream of chance, built on certainty. This is where the story begins to turn, not toward redemption, but toward understanding the true scale of the casino's influence, the economic gravity that shapes not just players, but entire societies. And in this turning, the darkness sharpens, because the casino does not merely profit from the individual, it profits from the world that surrounds it. There comes a moment, usually near dawn, when the casino feels almost weightless. The lights still glow with the same relentless brightness, the machines still murmur, the dealers still move with practiced elegance, but something in the air softens, as though the building itself exhales after a long night of feeding on human desire. It is in this fragile hour that the truth of the casino emerges most clearly, not in the roar of celebration or the quiet of defeat, but in the strange stillness that settles over a place designed never to rest. If you stand near a window, one of the few reserved for restaurants tucked away from the gaming floors, you can sometimes see the faintest trace of dawn bleeding into the edges of the sky. For a moment, the outside world returns. The real world. A world with responsibilities, limitations, laws of physics and economics that cannot be suspended by a lucky hand. And looking out at that faint horizon, you begin to recognize something startling. Casinos are not escapes from reality. They are reflections of it, distorted, magnified and weaponized, but reflections nonetheless. In the real world, systems exist that quietly pull wealth upward. Machines of finance and industry operate behind the scenes, shaping behavior with incentives and illusions of choice. The casino is merely a smaller, more concentrated version of these mechanisms, a place where the flow of money, power, and human emotion is condensed into a single architectural organism. And the dark economics of casinos, when understood fully, tell a story not just about gamblers, but about societies, governments, and systems built on uneven exchanges. As morning nears, a new set of players trickles in. Night shift workers unwinding after long hours, tourists eager to begin their day, regulars who treat the casino like a second home. These individuals step into a world still humming with the residue of the night before. And the cycle begins anew. Wagers placed, chips stacked, cards shuffled, machines awakened by the touch of fresh hands. The casino does not wait. It does not hesitate. Its hunger is constant, its appetite steady. For a moment you watch an older man sit down at a penny slot machine. He moves slowly, with the kind of care that suggests frailty or perhaps exhaustion. He inserts a bill, presses a button, watches the reels spin, then presses again. His face barely shifts. The wins are small, the losses smaller, but he remains there as though anchored to something deeper than entertainment. Perhaps this is routine. Perhaps it is loneliness. Perhaps it is the only place where he feels the illusion of control brushing lightly against his fingertips. Whatever the reason, his presence speaks to a larger truth. Casinos are not built solely for the desperate or the reckless. They are built for anyone seeking a momentary reprieve from the weight of the world. But reprieves come with costs, small ones at first, barely noticeable, a few pounds lost, a few hours gone, then larger ones, savings thinned, relationships strained, and eventually for some a collapse so complete that the path back becomes fogged over with shame. These human costs do not appear on the casino's financial statements. They do not show up in revenue forecasts or quarterly reports. They are absorbed quietly by the outside world, by families, by communities, by systems unequipped to repair the damage inflicted here. And yet the casino continues to expand, to innovate, to grow. Why? Because it has mastered something far more powerful than entertainment. It has mastered monetization of the human condition. Casinos understand boredom and turn it into engagement. They understand loneliness and turn it into belonging. They understand financial strain and turn it into dreams of rescue. They understand the human craving for significance and turn it into risk-taking. The economics are dark, not because they are hidden, but because they are brutally efficient. When people lose money in a casino, they often believe they lost because they misplayed a hand, or because they weren't lucky, or because they made one impulsive decision too many. But the loss began long before the card was dealt or the wheel spun. It began the moment they stepped into an environment designed to dissolve restraint. It began when the scent of artificially oxygenated air created alertness, when the warm lighting calmed the nervous system, when the maze-like layout removed clear escape routes, when the sounds of nearby winds convinced the subconscious that victory was within reach. Casinos do not take money. They cultivate the conditions in which people give it away. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of this economic machine is how deeply it intertwines with the world around it. Governments rely on casinos for tax revenue that funds infrastructure, public programs, education. Financial institutions manage the vast cash flows that circulate through these temples of chance. Cities build their identities around the glamour, attracting tourists who sustain entire local economies. Even media and entertainment industries benefit, glorifying gambling through films, advertisements, sports affiliations, and celebrity endorsements. And in this ecosystem, responsibility becomes diffused. No single entity is at fault, and so everyone is. The casino thrives in the gap between intention and consequence, between desire and discipline, between the promise of hope and the certainty of statistical inevitability. But not every story in a casino is tragic. Some people walk away after a night of harmless entertainment. Some win enough to tell stories of good fortune for years. Some enjoy the spectacle without falling into its gravity. Yet even these individuals contribute to the same machinery. Their presence normalizes the environment. Their participation funds the architecture of influence. Their laughter and excitement mask the quiet suffering occurring only a few machines away. And somewhere within this swirling contrast of joy and sorrow, of light and shadow, lies the true complexity of the casino's economic power. It is not a villain in the traditional sense. It does not coerce, it does not force, it does not deceive overtly. Instead, it reveals, it amplifies, it reflects the parts of human nature we wish we could master, but rarely do. As dawn breaks fully outside and the city awakens beyond the casino walls, a final truth begins to settle over the scene like a closing curtain. The economics of casinos endure because they align perfectly with the fault lines of human emotion. They exploit not weakness, but longing, not ignorance, but hope, not foolishness, but imagination. And imagination has always been the most expensive currency of all. A janitor sweeps quietly between machines now, moving with the kind of effortless acceptance reserved for those who have long understood the nature of this place. A dealer rotates out, offering a weary smile to their replacement. A machine resets itself after a long night. A player stands up slowly, checking their pockets as though searching for something intangible, a reason perhaps, or an explanation, and then walks toward the exit, blinking into the harsh honesty of daylight. Casinos will continue to grow, their lights will continue to shimmer, their games will continue to evolve, their economics will continue to feed on the fragile, beautiful complexity of human desire. And we, as observers of this world, are left with a question that lingers long after the last spin, the last bet, the last whispered hope fades into silence. Are casinos dark because of what they do to us? Or are they dark because they show us what we already are? The answer, perhaps, lies somewhere in between, in a space as uncertain, as unpredictable, and as deeply human as the games themselves. And as you step away from this story, the echoes of the casino still faint in your mind, you may find yourself thinking not about wins or losses, but about the invisible forces that shape the world around us. The story of money has always been a story of power, of desire, of the hidden currents beneath human behavior. And here, in the neon glow of a casino that never sleeps, those currents shine brightest. And so, as the lights dim in our narration and the final cards fall into place, the story leaves you with a truth wrapped in reflection. The economics of casinos were never just about money, they were about us.